Значит, теперь мы слушаем доклад Chaja Duerrschnabel из университета в Берне, который доклад называется «Греческие и латинские таблички с проклятиями и с так называемыми мольбами о справедливости в тексте средиземноморских ритуальных текстов». И вы будете говорить по-английски, правильно я понимаю?
Да, по-английски.
Хотя я смотрю, вы и по-русски можете говорить.
Чуть-чуть. Здравствуйте из Швейцарии.
Пожалуйста.
Я очень рада участвовать в этой конференции. Приветствую любимый Петербург. Благодарю за приглашение. И я очень надеюсь участвовать и в следующем году уже лично. К сожалению, я не смогу поддержать наш разговор по-русски. Позвольте мне продолжить по-английски.
Пожалуйста.
Today I'm going to talk about Greek and Latin defixiones and prayers for justice, and I'm going to contextualize them between other Mediterranean ritual texts. First of all, I would like to discuss with you some Greek and Latin letter tablets, and especially Chaja Duerrschnabel and prayers for justice. And the second half of my presentation will be dedicated to incantation bowl texts that are texts written on ceramic artifacts from Mesopotamia, mostly written in Jewish, Babylonian, Aramaic, the dialect of the Talmud, and in Mandaic, and we also have both in Syriac. And when I did some research on Greek and Latin defixiones, I thought, wow, this is very similar to the Semitic texts I'm working on, but there are also some important differences. And today I would like to do a comparison between these two corpora. As you all know, so this is just a little introduction. The Chaja Duerrschnabel or defixiones are lead tablets, and one very important characteristic of them is that they use the word defigo or afigo or some of these prefixed figo words, or the Greek katadeo, and they want to bind a mostly human target. They are found in graveyards, fountains, and caves as the places where the demons and lower divine powers were supposed to live. We have them from the 5th century AD, and the first of them were found in the Greek-speaking area, for example, in Sicily. And one important part of them is the binding of body parts. And we found these Chaja Duerrschnabel or defixiones in legal contexts, sports, and business contexts. Here I have Chaja Duerrschnabel from a legal context, and I'm really sorry that I don't have the accents on it, but I prefer to do it like this because before my presentation was crashed due to the accents, so I did it like this. I bind the tongue of Euclides and that of Aristophanes and the tongues of their liars. So we have here the binding of a specific body part, the tongue as the body part which can express the language or which can express the cause at the law course. So it's very nice. And here we have a binding of a person. And exactly not only the person is bound, but also the psyche of that person, the soul, and the tongue, and the hands. So we have the whole body parts from top. And first of all, we have the whole person. Then we have the psyche, also the whole person. And then the soul, and the tongue, and the hands. So this is what we're talking about with Greek defixiones. And here I have one from sports. They just want to guarantee that the other people involved in the sports event don't have the power to run, to jump, to hurry ahead, not to run around the marker pillar, and not to win. Very important. I always like to ask about the Sitz im Leben, so about the position of the texts within the context of the lives of the practitioners. And I think it's an important thing to underline that the powers addressed in those defixiones are always lower supernatural powers. So these defixiones do not address higher divine powers like Zeus or the gods. So they are addressed to lower powers. And one interesting thing is they are always future oriented. So they want to change an action that was not yet executed. So they are like an insurance that something won't happen. And interestingly, they are mostly anonymous. So we don't know the person who wrote this defixio or who wanted that the defixio is written for him or her. And we don't have a justification for that. That is different with the prayers for justice. Here we have the indication of a name, and we have a higher divinity like Mercury that is addressed. And we also have a condition that there won't be a change in that until they act accordingly. Okay. So to summarize, for the prayers of justice, we have higher divine powers, and we have a begging for justice. So in this in this example I have shown you, we don't have really a begging, but there are more elaborated examples with begging for justice. We have the notification of malevolent actions that have already been committed. So the divine power is informed that something that is not just was executed. And we have the indication of the aggrieved party, so the name of the person who wants that God does something for her or for him. And we have, of course, the justification by saying what was done. Here I have a short overview for you about the two subcategories of katadesmoi and prayers for justice. So the most important thing is that we have higher versus lower divine powers, future-oriented versus past-oriented, and anonymous versus indication of the aggrieved party, and justification versus non-justification. This was a short introduction about defixiones and katadesmoi that you all know. And now I want to share my interests in incantation bowl texts with you. Before I am going to address the question whether these texts should be considered as defixiones or prayers for justice, I would like to give you a short introduction about these texts in general. As you can see of the two examples we have that were given to me by the Vorderasiatisches Museum in Berlin, incantation bowls are ceramic artifacts. Normally they have the same shape as the domestic bowls, and they are inscribed in Hebrew, Mandaic, or Syriac, and mostly the writing has a spiral form from the bottom of the bowl towards its outer rim. And in some bowls, we also have beautiful drawings of little demons, as you can see on the example on the right side of my presentation. Most of these bowls are apotropaic in its character, and for a long time it was the communis opinio that these bowls do not address black magic or something like this. But recent found have shown that there are indeed bowls that can't be described as apotropaic prima facie. I will argue that these bowls are apotropaic, but with some mirror effect, but let's continue. There was a recently published book by Dunlan Ween. It's called Jewish Aramaic Curse Texts from Late Antique Mesopotamia. And I put a question mark after the word curse bowls because I'm not really sure if these bowls are curse bowls in the sense of defixiones or katadesmoi, or if we should rather consider them as prayers for justice, and therefore something like apotropaic in the sense of that some unjust thing that was done should be annulled. I would like to consider this bowl with you. It is from the Vorderasiatisches Museum in Berlin. Unfortunately, it is broken and some parts are missing. But nevertheless, I think it's a very good example for this type of text with a very elaborated language. And therefore, I want to read this text with you and to compare it with our findings about katadesmoi, defixiones, and prayers for justice. So a very important feature of these texts is that we have always the indication of the purpose at the beginning of the text. So this text actually has a self-declaration. Din kifla, this means this charm, and then we have the purpose for it, to overturn sorceries and woes and curses and afflictions and completed acts from, now we have the name of the client, Shilta, the daughter of Imi, against Shishin, the daughter of Esmenduch. So we have not only the client, but also the adversary, so that the addressed divine powers exactly know against which they have to act. And here the last sentence in this paragraph, and may they not approach Shilta, the daughter of Imi, from this day and forever. For me, it's clearly an apotropaic statement, because if I compare this kind of texts where we have an adversary with texts where we don't have an adversary, the use of the magic formulae and the expressions is not really different. And this formula that the Dikravun lo le Shilta bat imi min yoma danan leolam, that is something we always find in apotropaic bowls. Here we have the parallel to the defixiones, I adjure you, esh ba'et alechem, and then we have the notification of the fires of Gehenna. So the adjuration is not made just as an adjuration, but it's made up some fact that was well known by those people and the social environment. And here we also have the information that these fires brought down the house of Korach, Datan, and Abiram. That is not a biblical quotation, but it is rather, I would say, allusion to biblical themes, namely to Numeri 16. And then we have this magical name, and it's also given an epithet or something like that, whose crown is bound, overturn upon them magical acts and all evil spirits. we have new magical names, and they are also again set in context with a biblical scene, namely the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And this is really interesting because here we have two magical names, and in the biblical story which is behind the scene, we do not have the indication of the angels that were sent to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. So this incantation bowl text is something like filling an empty space. And here we have another indication to the divine powers, what they should do. They should open the doors of Sheol and the gates of Gehenna, and take iron and snares for gathering. And here we have a very interesting paragraph, because we have the assurance from the practitioner that the bowl will work against all kind of curses. So we have given the curse of the father, the mother, the brother, the sister, the daughter-in-law, and everybody around in the family environment. And the second paragraph from the middle of line 11, we can see that this is directed against pagans, that they go to the house of idols, that are going out to the cemetery. So here we have the mention of the cemetery, and whether or whispering, and here it's very interesting, in the presence of the Torah. So we have here the assurance that both, if these people who are the antagonists are Jews in the presence of the Torah, or pagans who go to their house of idols, that the bowl will work against both of them. So this is, I really like this. Here we have seen that is typical for incantation bowl texts. Actually, the whole text would be finished here, but they have certain horror vacui, so they always try to fill the whole bowl text. So they start again now with the purpose of the bowl. And what is interesting also with the indication of the client. And by the way, the name of the client, Asmanduch, is clearly an Iranian name. So we are not either sure if these people were Jews, which were assimilated to the Sasanian society in late antique Babylonia, or if these were Iranian customers coming to a practitioner writing those bowls in Jewish, Babylonian, Aramaic. Here we have the adoration and the invocation of some angels. Interestingly, none of these angels are really known from biblical texts, and they seem rather to be invented by what they can do. So with the root plus the suffix L. So the bowl has already empty space, so we have to write something on the empty space. So we have again the story of the doors of Sheol and the gates of Gehenna. So it's repeated here. Now we have the repetition of the magic names, but interestingly, they are different than the magic names in the beginning. And we have another angels like Baniel, and we have the indication that this bowl is directed against Yaror, an evil divine being. And here we have the parallel to the curse texts. We have the indication of that the curse should go out of the 252 limbs of the body. But this is a difference, I think, most defixiones and catadesmoi I know, they focus on specific body parts like the tongue, the hands or something. But in incantation bowls, we mostly have the indication of the 252 or 258 body parts, because according to Bavli, the Talmud, women have 252 and men 248 body parts. And before we end this incantation bowl, we have again some nice lines which are unfortunately very broken, but the formulation Yaakov Sela, we know it's from the Psalm 48. So we see in this incantation bowl it's included also allusions from the Bible and also will quotations. And I think you could see that the Jewish Aramaic incantation bowl text is much longer than the lead tablets from Greek and Roman era. But I think the concepts of cursing are incorporated in the bowls. But I think all language, which is a very high level of language, it's not the everyday language that you use, it's really sophisticated Aramaic, and also the quotation of biblical verses and the allusions, and also sometimes the use of legal language puts these incantation bowl texts nearer to prayers for justice than actually curse texts. And I invented a new classification for these texts. Especially the Kifla bowl texts that have been considered the prime example for cursed bowls. I think they are more something of mirroring bowls, mirroring back the evil that was sent to somebody. So we have also the past-oriented, and the gods or the divine beings should rectify an action that was done by an antagonist. So in my opinion, these incantation bowl texts are nearer to the prayer for justice. And yes, in the future, I would like to continue my research on the comparison, because I think there are many more interesting details that we can find when we compare two regions of ritual texts that are not obligatory related, because I don't think that we have a direct transmission from Latin and Greek defixiones or prayers for justice to Babylonian Jewish incantation bowls. But we can see how parallel opinions or perceptions of the human nature were invented into different cultural spheres. Thank you very much for your attention. It was a pleasure for me to speak.
Thank you very much, Ая. Спасибо большое за ваш интересный доклад. Сейчас мы выключим, наверное, вашу презентацию.
Нет, не надо, если можно, не выключай.
Оставляем, да?
Да.
Хорошо, тогда, пожалуйста, вопросы. Угу.
Не вопросы по-английски, пожалуйста. Я не могу понимать все по-русски. Я учу русский язык, но всегда я не знаю.
We will try.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions about names you mentioned in inscriptions.
Yeah.
on the last, the very last, your plate, yes, read yes, this, it is transliterated as Mashbiel, but I see in Hebrew script Mishbiel, maybe it is Mishbiel, as Michael, no, it was the same.
Where did I here?
The next.
Mashbiel, the very last, the very last. The very, very last, it was just on the screen. Yeah, yes, this.
Mashbiel.
Mashbiel, and it is, in Hebrew it is Mishbiel.
Yes, Mishbiel.
Mishbiel. It must be Mishbiel, yes?
It must be Mishbiel, yes. I
Yes.
the wrong
Yes.
one.
And the second question about the name, you transcribe it Immi, but maybe it is simply my mother, because Immi, it is my mother, no?
Yes, Immi is my mother, but we have, maybe you know the book of Talilan on Jewish names, and she found also some instances where this Hebrew name was transliterated in Greek, and there it was clearly translated Immi.
Could you please print the name of author in chat?
Sure. Let me show how I can do it.
It's on the bottom.
Yeah.
But isn't it possible that what Greeks transliterated as his name, it was simply not a name, but a kinship term, Immi, the son of my mother. Maybe it is my my brother, half brother.
It's possible, but I don't think so, because in the Talmud we have a lot of persons called Immi.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems quite a common name.
And it is a male or female name?
Female.
Female.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask
More questions? Alexei Belousov from Hamburg.
Thank you very much for your very interesting report. I have some remarks and one question. First of all, I'd like to say that we have many defixiones from Greek areas, not only on lead tablets. This is the old-fashioned prejudice, which was distributed by David Jordan in his 2 surveys of Greek defixiones not included in special corpora. I think that it would be very interesting for you that we have very similar defixiones on ceramics, on bowls, or on bottoms of bowls with the text in spiral in Greek. For example, from Olbia Pontica. And
that's amazing.
Yes, I have some examples from Boyotia. And I'm very glad to see that you began to make this comparison on textual level, because I used to make this comparison and observe this familiarity between Greek defixiones with spiral texts on ceramical fragments, with these incantations, both about which you say. I can send you my article on this.
I would love that.
If you want. And my question is this. We know that this term, which was proposed by Hendrik Versnel, prayers for justice, is not very good, because you know about the discussion between Martin Dreyer from Magdeburg and Hendrik Versnel. And my question, what do you think about this discussion, and which position do you have in this?
That is actually a very good question, and at the moment I don't think that I'm in the position to make really a point here, but what I have seen in my preliminary work, I come from mostly from the Semitic side, so I worked exclusively on the Aramaic texts, and now I'm including the Latin and Greek stuff. I think for my texts, the prayer of justice thing is not a really thing that can't be applied, because I don't know if it's really good idea to differentiate between these corporas. I think it's more like a continuum where we have the extreme on the one side, like the very, very small curse written on some piece of lead, some ceramic, and on another side we have the really elaborated language. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Alexei. And now, some questions more.
I have a general remark. We had a short seminar on magic practices in the Bible and in ancient, classical world, and the result was they're very similar in general. So this is the most ancient practice of humanity, magical practice, and not only in Mediterranean area, but even in Black Africa and in China, they have very similar features. We were really surprised how close those practices found in area of the Bible and para-biblical texts and early rabbinical culture, how close they are to Greek magical practices. This is why we probably are not obliged to search for direct influences because of this ground of similarity, which is much more ancient than any special culture, so to say.
Thank you very much for this remark.
Yeah.
It was Nina Brodinskaya from Moscow High School for Economics. And thank you very much. Спасибо большое. Schönen Dank.
Vielen Dank.